This is a classic because its commentary on gender inequity in artistic recognition is still deeply resonant today.
This is a classic because there's sex, violence, and clowns, and bullfighting.
That's a classic to me.
It's a classic.
This is our history. This is our legacy.
Hello, and welcome to This is a Classic, the Expand the Canon Theater podcast. We're your hosts.
I'm Kalina, she, her pronouns. I'm one of the curators of Expand the Canon.
And me, Gagarin. My pronouns are they, them. I've been a curator for the past 2 cycles along with Kalina, and we are here to introduce you to some plays by women and gender expansive writers that are classics.
Woohoo! Expand the Canon is a program that reimagines the classics, creating a legacy of storytelling with gender equity at its core.
Yes, and today we're getting into two very special plays. We're getting into Reflection in Disguise, or Drinking Wine and Reading Encountering Sorrow by Wu Zao, and Tango Palace, or There, You Died by Maria Irene Fornés. And if you go to expandthecanon.com, and you should, you would find these pitches for these plays.
Side note, I love that you accentuated the exclamation mark and there you died. Really hits it home. Okay, so Reflection in Disguise. If you're looking for a one-person piece that grapples with the legacy of women writers and the artifice of gender, consider this sharp short by Wu Zao, Reflection in Disguise.
And if you're looking for a play that leverages the existentialism of Beckett but ratchets up the stakes through erotic powerplay, you'll love Maria Irene Fornés's Tango Palace.
Excellent
So
pitches.
sexy.
Looking for both of those pieces, really.
Yeah. And Kalina, do you want to say what's particularly special for the two of us about these two plays?
Yeah, so for those in the know, which you should be and would be if you followed along
Hmm.
to our newsletter, Expand the Canon did a little 1X festival, which both of these pieces were a part of. Gigs was in Tango Palace, and I had the pleasure of directing Reflection in Disguise.
Yes, and Tango Palace was also directed by our fellow curator, Sky, who you will hear on the other podcast episodes. Expanded Universe.
Expanded. Gigs, you actually were the curator that paired together all of the plays for these podcasts. Do you want to tell
Yes.
us a little bit about why you paired these two pieces together in particular?
Oh, yes. Well, first thing, I think that both of these pieces interact with language in a really specific and interesting way. These two plays are plays that live in like a high poetic writing style, but are
Right.
still extremely accessible in their language. These are also two plays that interact with gender and sexuality and agency.
Mm.
Um, and like ability to control yourself and have control over your own body. In Drinking Wine, the main character is struggling with that more in an internal sense, whereas in Tango Palace, there's very much a combative relationship
Mm.
between the two clowns of Isidore and Leopold of who has agency and who does not, and
Mm.
how are you allowed to express yourself and your own soul.
Yeah, I think what's so interesting to me too is that on that topic of gender, both of these plays allow for really inventive directorial takes on how
Yes.
all of that is being expressed and like even what the messaging is. I remember when we were choosing Reflection in Disguise, we were like trying to figure out what the summary should be, and even among the curators we had a whole debate about how much the piece intended to play with gender, like in what way it
Hmm.
was playing with gender, and I think it just points to like really creative writing that allows for some brilliant interpretation.
The pieces themselves are very specific about what they are and what they are doing, but the way in which you yourself or we as like theater artists can fill that container, there are multitudes of ways in or spins that you could do on this, which is like one of those things where I'm like, okay, you want to do Titus Andronicus, but it's football players, like if
Yeah.
you want to treat classics as these kind of big empty vessels that we can sort of fill with whatever we wish, then these two plays I think are perfect examples of that.
Yeah. Super well said.
Legacy.
Tell me about reflection in disguise or drinking wine and reading encountering sorrow.
I know it's a mouthful of a title.
I love it though.
I know, me too. There's something so lovely about just like taking up the time and space to say that whole name. This play is a one-person show that follows a poet, Xie Shu Chai, and she comes out at the top of the play dressed in like classic Chinese men's hero clothes, at least according to the stage directions, and essentially laments her plight as this brilliant poet that's trapped in a woman's body, especially at a time when the acknowledgement of women's talent and skill was not really recognized. And so she talks about how she's never going to get the credit she deserves and never be recognized as the brilliant artist that she is. All she really wants is to be the ambitious professional artist, but
Mm,
because she's a woman and patriarchy, that's never going to happen. So the play is set in her study where she has this portrait of herself that she painted well before this play of herself dressed as a man. And she talks to it, addresses it, engages with this image of her dressed in sort of men's apparel, and talks about all the famous male poets that get applauded, and she just sort of gets forgotten. Um,
hmm
as you mentioned before, there's really, really beautiful poetic language. There's also quite a bit of music in it.
hmm
In our one act festival, I did not, Dorothea and I did not end up really engaging with the music, but every like other paragraph is essentially a song that she sings. And the lyrics are obviously very poignant, but I also think that there's something so interesting about the play between music and poetry and like monologue in this piece.
I I completely forgot about the music when I was watching it happen in the performance of it because the emotion of the piece is so massive
Yes.
that
Yeah,
it
it and
almost makes sense that it could also then lean into music or stay in this place of just like, I don't know, big, overwhelming. I mean, Dorothea's vocal ability during that piece was really
yeah, really
top notch.
stunning. Yeah,
That's
I totally agree. I wish we'd had a little bit more time to play with that music, but
mhm,
this is a play with music as opposed to a musical, but there is something about someone being unable to express the height of their desperation and instead singing, whether it's like serenading their portrait or singing to themselves, is
mhm,
interesting to explore in production. And Dorothea played Xiaoshu Chai in our One X Festival. The two of us talked a lot about like, is the end a hopeful note? Is it a hopeful note with her, deciding she's going to pave her own way? Is it a desolate note about how she's like never going to achieve fame? Is she casting a spell to like make herself famous? I don't know. There's so many ways to sort of explore it,
mhm.
which I think is really interesting and exciting.
Well, I mean that final line of who will release my poet's soul.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
something, yeah, and it's like it's just the repetition of that is so and it's so funny because I when I read it for review for the list, I saw it as kind of like that desolate note, but I love this idea of it being so open to interpretation because it does kind of have this like spell-like quality to it. And
Mhm.
also just from the perspective as an artist. I think like any artist like watching that show is like, yeah, actually this is exactly the plight. Even though I think that for Juju Chai, it's like this, I know that part of her plight is this womanhoodness of it all and like being constricted. But it also kind of makes me think about how many of those Hollywood starlets where they've been like, yeah, everyone tells you that you're not going to work after 40, you know?
Right. About like memory and what legacy you're leaving.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And
I
even
totally agree.
though you may be later on in your life, the cry and desperate need that comes from our souls as artists to create and to produce art is unavoidable and
Yeah.
undeniable and will like literally have you keeling over on the ground and crying, and all you can do
Right.
is drink some wine and
Drink
try
some
to
wine.
feel a little bit better.
And I also think what's so striking to me is that even though the character in the play is a poet, and like obviously all art needs an audience, but I think of poetry as one that like a poet could theoretically write without an audience. Whereas like with theater, our work actually isn't complete unless we have at least one audience member. And so I think a lot about sort of the way Xie Shuchai talks about needing just one person to remember her or like someone
Mm,
to see her work that feels
hmm.
particularly like resonant with theater.
Exactly. Yeah. It's funny because
Yeah.
especially given that we both live in New York City and this is like a
Mm.
massive artistic scene, and there's so much struggle involved
Yeah.
also in the artistic process, which is so clearly articulated in this play. But I tell people all the time, I would move upstate and do theater for the squirrels if I could, but I can't.
Mm-hmm.
I have to
Well, I'd
have
move
people
upstate with
here.
you and go make theater for the squirrels. I'll move upstate with
Well,
you.
you know what? Okay. Then we at least have each other, so then there's another person
Right.
viewing it. We got it.
All right, everyone come visit us upstate.
For theater for the squirrels. Oh my God.
History.
Can I tell you a little bit about this awesome playwright too?
I was just gonna say, please tell me about Wu Zhao.
So Wu Zhao was born in 1799 into a merchant family with three older siblings. And I guess surprisingly, maybe not surprisingly, like loving supportive families have always existed, but for some reason for me it always feels a little surprising. All of her family members supported her literary pursuits and really encouraged her to write. They were travel companions for her, read plays for her, really supported her writing and her literary work. In fact, her dad even hired private tutors for her to give her a really good formal education in poetry, music, painting, and calligraphy. She really pursued all of those arts and
Oh
was
yeah.
exceptionally talented in all of them. When she was 22, she did marry another merchant, so moved into another merchant family. And her husband did actually make her an office in their home so she could keep writing and did encourage her to keep pursuing literature and poetry, but wasn't quite as supportive as the rest of her family, wasn't really interested
Mm,
in reading or listening to her works, was just sort of like, here is a space, enjoy, goodbye. So she was well cared for and had access to luxuries and access to education, but I think she didn't really have sort of the companionship she wanted of
mm.
folks who were just as passionate about writing and literature and really wanted to engage with her in dialogue in that way. So
Yeah.
there's this interesting tension of her being unsatisfied with her life at home in terms of that like artistic fulfillment, but also having a space to express it. And so I think some of the like melancholy and wistfulness that she expresses both in this play and also in some of her other poems and songs are reflective of this sort of home life.
Oh, 100%. I was gonna say it sounds exactly like she actually wrote this play about herself sitting in her study.
Right. Yeah,
Yeah.
no, I absolutely agree. Some people do claim that this might be semi autobiographical, which I would not be surprised by.
Oh.
I'm sure Wu Zhao
She
herself,
was
as
drinking
an
some wine.
extremely was
She
probably
was
drinking
drinking
some
some
wine.
wine
I
and
would.
reading some sad poetry and being like, I wish I had
um,
other people around me who wanted to listen to what I'm doing.
wanted to listen to me, which is fair because she was an extremely prolific writer. She wrote not just a drama, a particular genre of comedic Chinese opera that combines poetry, prose, recitations, dance, singing, and mime. So she wrote one of those.
Oh.
She also wrote 85 poems, 309
Oh.
songs. Well, the lyrics to 309 songs,
Whoa.
five orchestral suites, and one aria on top
Holy.
of this drama, drinking wine and reading Encountering Sorrow. I know, like
Whoa. A
like a
cannon.
prolific writer. I just Alexander Hamilton who? Um but so this drama, Drinking Wine and Reading Encountering Sorrow, was first printed in 1825 and then reprinted in 1826. It also got a production that year and sort of catapulted her into wider spread acclaim and publication. It was
Wow.
really her first work to receive that sort of accolade. And because of it, a prominent advocate of women's writing named Chen Wen-shu then brought Wu Zhao into his circle of 10 women writers whose work he championed, which I find to be a fascinating model. I'm like really curious about this benefactor as well. But I think it's really interesting that a little bit later in life, Wu Zao was able to find that like companionship that she longed for, writers and poetry. Apparently, this circle of women writers, many of them were known for emulating masculine writing styles and voices in their work. I don't
Ooh.
read Chinese well enough to tell you what that means, but I find that to
Uh-huh.
be an interesting fact that we stumbled across.
Yeah.
Later in life, Wu Zao became a priestess. We love a multi hyphenate, and then died at the age of 64. The exact
Oh.
details of her death aren't certain, but I love that she was like, I'm done with writing. Let me go become a priestess.
And
Um,
64, I feel like, is quite old for the
yeah,
1800s, for the early
yeah,
1800s at that, too.
right. I think so too. Seems like a good long life. She wrote so many
Yeah.
things. There are also some scholars that argue that Wu Zhao might have been a lesbian because of her deep unhappiness with her relationships with her husband
Oh, come on,
and
girl,
also sort
same.
of the way she sought out the company of women. So,
Oh, yeah.
she also wrote a poem called For the Courtesan Qing Lin in particular, which, is some would say you could interpret it as expressing deep desire for the companionship of women.
If,
And
if it sounds gay, it's
it
probably
probably
gay.
is. There's like a lot of lesbian desire and queer erotic longing in her writing.
Oh, yeah.
And she's also hailed as one of the first great Chinese women poets. So, yeah, kind of iconic.
Well, if there's one thing that lesbians like to do, speaking from experience, it's long and pine. So
Yeah,
lots of
yeah, echo
wistful
that.
longing and pining. We're really good at that.
I also want to take a moment to just shout out Sophie Volpe, who translated the edition of Drinking Wine and Reading Encountering Sorrow that we read and love because none of the
Yes,
curators actually read Chinese. Sophie
true.
Volpe is a professor of East Asian languages and cultures and comparative literature at UC Berkeley. She specializes in particular in Chinese literature of the 16th through 19th centuries, so this is one of them. She's written so many books and articles, translated so much. Yeah, is just such a prolific writer in her own right, and actually came to see our one act show and is just such a stellar, delightful human.
Oh my God, I
So
can't
big
believe
shout
I
out to
missed her.
her. I know, gigs. I was so stressed.
Holy bejeez. Well, that's like really important too, because this was one of those plays where we read it and we were like, damn, we really like this play. This translation, though, is nonsense.
Yeah.
And then we
Yeah.
found the second translation by Sophie, and we were like, oh, wait, this one, this girl.
Yeah. Yeah. So shout out to translators too that make this work accessible.
Oh my God. Sophie,
Yeah.
if you're listening, I hope you liked the shows.
Me too. um
Oh my God.
But
Wow.
yeah, so
That's
those are the like awesome people behind Drinking Wine and Reading Encountering Sorrow.
incredible. Do you have a quote in particular from this piece you want to elevate for us?
Yeah, I mean there are so many.
Oh, girl.
But I think the quote for me that like sums up this play, or at least like sums up the impetus behind this play, if not the whole thing. Pretty early on in the play, Xia Shutai says, "I have a man's ambition and a woman's sorrow and frustration." And I think any way you slice that quote, whether you're
Mm.
like thinking about it from like a gender lens, from like a psychoanalytic lens, there's just so many ways to unpack and morph that. And I think it's such an interesting line.
Again, speaking to these plays as being large vessels that we can fill with whatever we would like. Reading this play as a trans person, I read
Mm.
that line and was like, yeah, actually, that's exactly how I felt, especially earlier
Mm.
on in my life when I was initially figuring out a lot of the gender shit. So, Dorothea is not a trans actor, so she brought a completely other flavor to this. But again, you could fill this with so much. But also just hearing her say that line is true for her as well, which is like
Yeah,
the beautiful power of a classic is that it's like this could be present in any body. And, just what you were talking about, Kalina, with those different colors that we could
yeah.
tease out of this or fill it, which is just, oh, it's so cool. And I'm like,
Ugh,
I'm all
yeah.
for bringing more fun, experimental, chunky pieces into our classical canon that we can putz around with
Yes.
and have fun.
Yeah, yeah. More pieces that like demand interpretation and like
Yes.
embodiment to understand what it is. I agree.
Have an opinion, have a point of view on something,
Have a point of
please.
view. It's a place to start. Totally agree.
Legacy.
Want to tell me a little bit about Tango Palace?
Oh my God, do I want to tell you about Tango Palace? Yes.
I want to know when we selected Tango Palace, gigs had a very strong positive reaction to what they would do to play a role in Tango Palace. And so I'm so thrilled that you were able to be in Tango Palace.
Yes. Whenever I am reading these plays, I am reading them from the point of view of a performer and thinking about, well, if I were to do it, how would I do it? And this was one of those plays where I read it and I'm a very physical performer. There's a lot of physicality in this. It is, I think you could
Mm,
call it a clown piece.
yeah.
It's like sexy clowns, sexy BDSM clowns, which is
Oh my god, put that on
oh
your marketing materials.
genuinely, and is like so aggressively in my wheelhouse. It's not even funny. So it was just a joy, and I got to read a lot of Maria's, well, Irene's. My apologies. She preferred to be called Irene. I read a lot
Yes.
of Irene's plays for this year's list, and they were all stunning. I'll say that they were all really, really good. She's an amazing playwright. But this was one in particular that I really was like, whoa, like you're doing something like this is something that I think if it were to be produced as like a new piece now, people would be losing their minds all over it. Which is why,
Mm,
if you want to throw me, Sky, and Guillermo, who played Leopold in the reading, some money to do a full production of this, hit us up because we would love to make it happen. But anyway, so let's get into Tango Palace because I was trying to write down the summary of this, and Tango Palace is more a play in which things happen rather than there is a plot.
I'm
Yes, I
intrigued.
yes. So it all takes place in a single room that is very lavishly decorated. There is lots of antique furniture. There are all these like collectibles and curios on the walls. There's a big door on the backstage, but there is a lock on the door. And there is also a shrine in the room that has a whole other collectible set of items. There is a pair of bullhorns, there's a bandoliers, there's a sword, there's bullfighting gear, there are beetle masks, it, guitars. And when I tell you that all of these items are used in the play, all of these items are used in the play. No extraneous items on just because of aesthetics in here.
I
Everything
love
is
it.
necessary, right?
It's giving
Um,
like utilitarian maximalism. Love.
Very much so, very much so. And so we have two characters in this play. We have Isidore, who is a bonbon gender fluid clown. And then there is Leopold, who is a earnest youth who wears a suit. And Leopold starts the show inside of this big burlap sack, and Isidore is in his shrine, and they basically encounter each other. And Isidore is, I will say part of this I think might be tinged by my actor's perspective inside of it, but Isidore is basically horrendously in lust with Leopold, like completely
Mm,
head over heels, must have him. However, this is a play about an extremely toxic relationship.
mm,
So Isidore sort of shows this love by kind of trying to mold Leopold into the perfect man for him. He teaches Leopold how to tango. He beats Leopold up constantly.
oh,
Like
damn.
very physically abusive, is like punching and hitting and kicking him over. And there's also this fun tick that Isidore has where he has these note cards where every time he thinks he's said something that is interesting or poignant, he will throw a note card out, and the note card has exactly what he has just said written on it, which he says he prints with his magic printing press. Um,
Sure.
and because, of course, why not?
What else would he print it with?
Right? So all of this is going on, and Leopold gets super fed up with this and is like, this is ridiculous. I'm not playing your games anymore. I want to leave. And this is the reason I mentioned the cards is because this is a really big moment where Isidore is like, okay. And so he starts calling out these cards in a rapid thing and
Mm.
basically is detailing all of Leopold's motions as he does them. He's like, walk to the door. Leopold's already walking to the door, knock on it, bang, blah,
Mm.
blah, blah, and kind of Leopold sort of goes through all the five stages of grief, but Isidore already knows and has a card for every single thing he will do before he does it, which,
Hmm.
yes, which is I think, a great way of establishing the world of this play in which Isidore is kind of like God. He's kind of
Yeah.
omnipotent and knows everything that will happen and has complete control over the space and is always like 5 steps ahead of Leopold. And so after this all ends, Leopold is like, no, I know that there's a way out of this place because there is a voice that tells me that there is, which is
Mm.
very upsetting to Isidore because he is like, no, I am the only one.
Right.
Like you must be here for me. So they do this funny little exercise where Leopold is like, no, like let's like try to be peaceful and I want you to picture yourself inside of an orange grove and we're
Hmm.
gonna do some calming breathing. And Isidore totally messes this up. And it's what is the gag of this is that at the beginning of this section, Isidore basically predicts that Leopold will dump a bucket of water on his head as a gag. And
Mm.
Leopold's like, I'm not going to do that. And then at the end of the scene, Leopold does exactly that, thinking that he is
Hmm.
acting of his own free will. But Isidore is like,
Mm.
I said you were going to do that, and you just did it.
Interesting.
Um, yes. So that's the end of scene one. We move into scene two, and in scene two, things have certainly ratcheted up because Leopold has accepted that he is trapped in this space with Isidore, but is very combative with him. And Leopold is like, there has to be a way out. I want to know where the key to this door is because there's a big lock on it, right? So there has to be a key, there has to be a way out. And Isidore is perpetually playing games and is like, okay, I'll tell you where the key is if you do a bullfight with me.
Mm.
Big producing, directing, choreography moment. There is a full bullfight that happens on stage in which Isidore plays the matador and Leopold
And
is the bull.
interesting.
Yes, and
That's kind of
Isidore
fun.
is like,
Fun to stage.
it's very fun. Even just staging it in the reading was a blast. And it was funny because Sky was like, I don't even know how I would do this in the full production. And I was like, well, I have ideas, Sky.
I love those like impossible stage directions that are like, and now a bullfight. And you're like, what?
Truly, because it's also a very prolonged scene and also very much about like sexual desire and toxic relationships. This play doesn't have a sex scene because that's like not would not make sense in the style, but I think like this is the sex scene of this play, is
Interesting.
in this
Oh, I like
bullfight.
that.
Yeah, well,
Yeah,
because what really clicks that in for me is because so this whole bullfight happens. Isidore wins because of course he does. He wins every game they play.
of course.
And he's shoved all of these spiked banderillas, which are the big barbs that they hang on the bowl to like make it tired. So he's stabbed Leopold with all of these things, and he's holding him, and he gives this weirdly kind of loving like post-mortem to in the game world, like the bull of Leopold, who
Hmm.
went on 51 passes and would have kept pursuing, and he wasn't lauded as much as he deserved by the crowd, but the matador
Mm.
loved him. And there's this really beautiful moment where I think the whole play, which lives in this very kind of like we're constantly going at like a 9 or a 10, everything sort of comes down to like a 3 or a 4. And Isidore and Leopold just start talking to each other, like genuinely for the first time. And Isidore says to Leopold, I have no alternative. And Leopold is like, what do you mean? And they have this conversation about how Leopold just wants Isidore to love him, and Isidore
Hmm.
wants to love Leopold, but he's like, I cannot love you kindly. I cannot be sweet to
Hmm.
you or be gentle. I can't do it because I'm not built that way. And
Oh.
Leopold is like, but you've never tried. It's a very heartbreaking, it gives me very like heartbreaking pillow talk moment.
Mm.
where all the wool has been pulled away from everyone's eyes and they're able to like really look at each other.
Yeah.
And it's funny because then after this, when Isidore is like, you actually want me to treat you this way, Leopold tries to choke Isidore out, which he gets out of by being like, no, I gotta tell you a story. And he launches into this crazy story. And then at the end, there is this really amazing monologue from Leopold where he's like, why do I keep pursuing you despite the fact that
Mm.
you can't love me in the way that I want you to? Even more so, why are you this way? What has been done to you to make you feel that you cannot love me in the way that I want you to? Um,
Hmm.
and it's really quite sad because it's kind of like, you know, I think we've all been there. We've all been Leopold, like, you
Yeah.
know, just desperately trying to cling to this relationship and make it work, but it just isn't possible.
Yeah, it gives Isidore so much grace too, right? That Isidore's been tormenting Leopold in a lot of ways, and it's just such a moment of being able to recognize their humanity and pain, cliche as that may be.
Yeah, well, I think that's a huge thing because this play moves at such a crazy pace and there's so much insane
Mm.
stuff happening all the time that especially in a full stage production, like getting into the true romantic and physical connection between these two, it really just would take it to another level.
Yeah.
So, because Leopold gives this whole like super sad monologue, being like, "What can I do to make your eyes turn to me with love?" And at the end of it,
Mm.
Isidore just it says in the stage directions, Isidore pouts innocently, and
Oh.
it's like, "Oh, you fucking asshole!" You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
because he
Ugh.
doesn't see it. So that's the end of scene two. And then scene three begins, and it's described as having a nightmarish quality. And Isidore has himself and Leopold put on these beetle masks. He has another very long monologue about beetles, just like just the
Sure.
concept of beetles that ends with this weird sort of like orgasmic height. And Leopold is doing this very sort of strange dance the whole time and is like, I want to sweep up all the dirt and the dust. And from an audience perspective, you're like, what? Like they've both lost it. Like they both
Yeah.
fully lost it. We're gone. Um,
Fascinating.
so they kind of work through this, and Leopold finally takes off his beetle mask and is like, you know what, actually, Isidore, you are my enemy, and I must kill you. This is where it also gets once more into clown territory. Is Isidore's like, oh my god, you want to kill me? That's so hot. You better. Oh my god, you gonna do it? You gonna do it? And
Oh my
then Leopold,
god.
right? And then Leopold's like, actually, I'm not gonna do it. He's like, I'm not gonna do it because you want me to be mean to you, and
Ooh.
you would like it, and I don't want to be a murderer. Which Isidore's like, yeah, no, you don't know how to be a murderer because you only know what I've taught you to do, and I haven't
Ooh.
taught you to kill people. So Isidore continues to torture and provoke Leopold and is like, well, you know what? Here's a new game. Let's duel each other because I'm offending you so much. So we're going to duel for me to have the right to offend you and do whatever the hell I want.
Sure, naturally. That's the only way to figure this out.
Right? And it's hilarious because Leopold's like, no, I don't want to do this. And Isidore's like, no, it's gonna be so fun. We're gonna have so much fun. So they set up to duel, and Leopold's acting like he's gonna pass out, and Isidore's like, oh wait, hold on, take it easy. And then Leopold stabs Isidore and
Oh.
actually kills him,
Oh.
which Isidore does not find sexy this time.
I don't think one would.
No, not being stabbed through the heart. So he's been stabbed, he dies, and
Mm.
Leopold's kind of like, holy shit, what did I just do? And then it's in this moment that the big locked door at the back of the stage opens,
Whoa.
and there's all these like clouds and harps beyond the door, which has been like Leopold's big goal this whole time, right? And who comes down but Isidore,
Whoa. Plot twist.
reborn, plot twist, carrying a fresh stack of cards, and he beckons Leopold to follow him. And in the stage
What?
directions, it says they go on to commence the next stage of their battle.
What?
Yeah, right? It's such a mind twist,
Wow, yeah.
right?
So, okay, question for you. Do you think it all starts over again, or do you think it's like level up?
I think there is a level up. I think it is moving beyond this because no, I don't think that it restarts. I think that there is like layers to this because when I was speaking to my friends and my family and other people about the play after the reading was over, a lot of them were like, it's kind of like the allegory of the cave, right?
Ooh.
And Isidore is like the conscious mind and like the ego that is keeping
Huh.
Leopold trapped, and he must be able to move beyond that. I
Yeah.
mean, I don't know, but I think that's a easy way in. I think the play itself begins in the allegory of the cave, but suggests that there is a level beyond that. And also, just from a personal perspective, this play and how it deals with masculinity specifically, and
Mm,
like self determination and self identity. I think that kind of discovery for us as people happens in levels. Like there's a
yeah.
level where you kind of break through the initial like hyper patriarchal societal programming, and you're like, oh, okay, I don't have to be a misogynistic sexist piece of
Mm,
shit all the time.
so true.
And
So true.
you have to untangle things in waves and in levels,
Right.
and each time it only gets harder. So that's what I think this is referencing. Yeah.
Cool. Part of the beauty of both of these plays, as you've already mentioned, is the like levels on levels one could put onto it. But I
Oh
also
yeah.
think, right, like I think the best plays leave you with a question and leave you talking to your neighbors about what just happened. And this is definitely one of those plays that will inspire conversation, will inspire like disagreement, even just like in the way that your friends read into the allegory and you're like, oh, not quite. I think there's also like this element to it. And so I think these are both classics because of that.
Yeah, and this is one of those plays that you could literally spend like 2 or 3 years working on.
Yeah.
Because it is just so dense. I also want to give a shout out. We had some Adelphi students who were also presenting a show with us on that night, and afterwards, all of them were like, "We want to do this in our scene study class. We want to do this in our scene study class." And I was like, "Good luck, guys. Yeah,
Yeah. Good
like,
luck for real. I love the
go.
ambition though.
I do too because I was the same way when I was an undergrad. Truly, truly.
History.
So, shall we talk a little bit about Irene?
Yes, tell me about Irene.
So, Maria Irene Fornés was born in Havana, Cuba in 1930, and she was the youngest of six children. Yeah, right? Big family. So, her father dies in 1945, and her mother relocated the whole family to New York City, which
Ow.
is crazy to be a solo mom and be like, okay, six kids, we're all gonna go to New
Let's
York City.
go.
Um,
Yeah.
and so Fornes would call this city her home until her death in 2018. She was a big it girl of the New York sort of underground experimental scene. Sidestepped any sort of a traditional educational bend, instead
Hmm.
immersing herself fully into the art scene. She studied under the tutelage of an abstract painter named Hans Hofmann. She helped her then lover, Susan Sontag, uh,
Okay.
through writer's block and helped her craft things. She studied with Lee Strasberg as
Oh
well
my
at the
god.
Actors Studio in their playwriting unit. Yeah, so she got the good stuff. She got the good stuff from the source right at the beginning.
Yeah.
And this play, Tango Palace, was actually her first play she ever wrote. It
Hmm.
debuted in 1963 under its
What a way to
original title,
start off.
right? And like that's another thing too, is when I found out this was her first play, I was like, this was her first play. Like,
Yeah.
oh my God, I might as well just
Impressive.
quit now. Like, oh my God, like this was the first one. That's crazy.
Man.
And it was originally titled There You Died, which is a line that Isidore has in the play. And she dedicated it to the memory of her father. hmm
Hmm.
We're getting some of the masculine themes.
Mm.
Um,
Hmm.
so she created over 50 works for the stage, spanning full-length plays, operas, devised pieces, site-specific works. And she was a collaborator and mentor to many writers as time went on. She became a director later on in her career. And
Hmm.
once she became a director and she started directing her own work, she was like, that is actually the only way I want to produce my plays. It's a
Hmm.
deeply necessary part of her practice. Something I found really interesting about Fornés was she resisted categorization as a Latina playwright. She resisted being called a female playwright. She was also a lesbian and she resisted having these identities tacked onto her work, even though
Hmm.
she acknowledges that they were critical to her experience and they were at the heart of her advocacy. She did not let like the larger zeitgeist define them as, oh, this is like the queer play or the Latine play, which I really love that sort
Hmm.
of universal access that she brings to this. There was
Yeah.
writer Scott Cummings wrote of her plays that a Fornes play insists on being taken on its own terms,
Hmm.
which I think is so true because when that was one of that's was true across all of her plays was that it was this play is very specific about what it's doing and you can bring your own point of view to this play but you cannot bend this play to your point of view. You know
Hmm.
what I mean?
Yeah, I love that descriptor. I think the most successful plays and the most interesting plays to me are the ones that assume that the audience will meet it where it is. And the beauty
Yeah.
of Fornés' work is that it's like you're saying, I won't bend to you. You will figure out how to access my plays. And it's not that they're inaccessible, it's just that she insists that the audience raise to the challenge because I think oftentimes we are ready to rise to that challenge. And so she
Oh,
like offers it to
100%.
us.
And that was something that I certainly felt in the aftermath of the reading was that people were so excited by having a play that was engaging and entertaining, but also was challenging to them as audience members without being so abstract that they shut down and were like, I don't know what's going
Mm,
on. I think
yeah.
especially in a lot of modern theater, we either treat our audience like they are very, very dumb, or we expect far too much of them in terms
Yeah.
of understanding. And I think it takes a very, very strong playwright and theater artist to craft something that walks that line in such a strong way like this play does.
Yeah. I totally
Like,
agree.
yeah, because even through all of the high themes and the crazy allegories, and Isidore has a lot of these very, very, very like metaphorical monologues, and Leopold too, that really like make you think, and it's this very meaty stuff. And then it'll be followed up by like Leopold going through more physical cartoonish violence than like Elmer Fudd, you know, but he pops out just fine. Like,
Yeah.
and then Isidore does something weird and sexy and will like trip him and then like shake his butt in his face. You know, it's like it's
Yeah.
the perfect blending for me of high and low.
Yeah. Totally. I also find it really interesting how both of these plays that we're talking about today sort of mix artistic genres.
Yeah, and you can lean into it as far as you want or not. I think in a production, I don't think you could go super minimal, but you could probably go very abstract with the movement, or you could make it super realistic. If you have the budget and you wanted to do like full gore for the bullfight or for some of the other stuff that happens, you could do it.
Yeah.
It could be a wild ride. And it's the same thing like you were talking about with Reflection in Disguise, where there is music and you can choose to lean into that, or you can choose to not and still craft a very striking piece.
Yeah. I totally
It's really
agree.
cool.
Gates, what is a favorite quote of yours from this play?
Oh, so it is a line, it is an Isidore line.
Mm.
So, to give a little context, he has just flipped a card at Leopold, and Leopold reads it, and the card reads, All is fair in love and war. And Leopold is like, What's with this one? And Isidore's like, Oh no, that's a great one. And then he says, It teaches you that all is fair in love and war. And it teaches you that when someone is telling you a story about love and war, you are not to stand there and say, That's not fair, or you'll be considered a perfect fool,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah. Again, another quote that can be like sliced a million different ways and still make sense and like inspires critical thought.
And what I loved about like this line in particular was because Isidore is so in control all the time, there are very few lines that let you peek beneath the veneer of the performance. And I
Mm,
think this is one of those lines. It's this
mm,
idea of why must we believe that being treated poorly is something to be expected and also something to learn to love and think of as an expression of love when,
mm.
you know, somebody else taught us that first.
Yeah.
So, yeah, there's,
Ugh. Good quotes.
I love this. I love these plays.
I love. They're so good. Everyone should do them, and everyone should cast gigs in Tango Palace.
Oh my God, please. I'm practically already memorized anyway, so it's good to go. I got a costume and everything. You don't got to spend any money. I'm going to be the cheapest actor you ever hired.
Also, please pay them because we believe in pay equity here. Anyways,
Dum dum.
thank you for joining us for This is a Classic, the Expand the Canon podcast. If you believe in the importance of expanding the canon, please give us a 5-star review and subscribe to this podcast. And then hit the share button and forward it along to a friend, a colleague, a professor, a clown, whoever you want. To make it easy to find, read, and produce these plays, you can sign up and subscribe to expandthecanon.com. For information on what's up next, you can follow us on Instagram, Facebook, or join our mailing list. You can also support this effort by buying some Expand the Canon swag to brag to your friends that you're changing the future of classics. Bragging rights. You can read and produce these plays as classics and reach out to us to partner on them or cast us in them or hire us as directors on them, or straight up donating to make all these efforts possible, which you can do from our website, expandthecanon.com. Again, I'm Kalina, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.